Hey classes, welcome back. If you check out the board behind me, we've got an earthquake this morning. This morning during first period, my phone alarm went off saying that there was an earthquake detected. Honestly, it was one of the things I thought for sure was because of the Great American Shakeout. Parents or guardians tell you about October 17th, 1989, we had the 6.9 Loma Prieta earthquake, which was centered down in Santa Cruz area, but we felt it throughout the Bay Area, and actually the earthquake waves in some respects got focused in parts of the Bay Area. It was a huge event and also caused the collapse of part of the Bay Bridge, one section from the Bay Bridge, a driving structure over in Oakland, and also downtown San Francisco had significant damage. So when we are looking at what is causing those earthquakes, what is making the plates move, remember one of the answers, not the only answer, but one of the answers is radioactive decay deep within the earth, keeping things warm and keeping things moving, making our planet incredibly dynamic, and also very important for recycling materials, especially when we get into evolution and we talk about the moving continents. That's going to, again, play a very, very important part. If you live here in Pacifica like we do, you notice if you ever bring up this screen, recent earthquakes in California and Nevada is my favorite because it's the simplest interface. They always show a couple of dots from right down the street over here, right down the street. From where I'm talking right now would be right on the border between Pacifica and Daly City. And that was the epicenter of the famous 1906 quake. We've mentioned that before. And technically, there's still aftershocks, still rumblings going along on that part of the fault all the time. Now, on this sheet, the larger the square, the larger the earthquake. In this case, it was about a 4. And according to my maps, it looks like it was centered on the Antioch Fault, but I can't confirm that yet. There's the, the Green Valley Fault over there. There's the Concord Fault, not too far from one called the Calaveras Fault. We've got a lot of faults in the East Bay. Statistically speaking, the next big fault in the Bay Area to go for a large earthquake, I should say, will probably be the Hayward Fault. But you can't guarantee that. It's a statistical thing, which is one of the reasons we study statistics in here. Also, this does relate to the curves that we saw earlier when we were doing bell curves and we were doing logarithmic curves, things like radioactive decay. Check out the curve that we used when we were talking about the scale, the Richter scale, when we measure earthquakes. The curve goes up something like this in terms of strength. It's a curve going this way. Pens die in here. But when we look at a 4 and a 5 and a 6, it doesn't go up as a linear progression. It goes up as a logarithmic progression, which is a curve on a graph. And so we see that a lot. And again, if you look at California map right here, all those little dots showing all the earthquakes that happened within the last week. And you can see this, by the time I took this picture here, or this is a live picture online, it's a blue dot now because it happened within the last day. This was right after it happened. We were checking the magnitude. But look how many they get down here in Southern California. Also, do check out the big cluster of earthquakes they often have up here in Northern California, what they call the Triple Junction Fault. This is the one that is capable of producing a tsunami. So we were talking about tsunami waves earlier, and we will again. That's a place that we're going to keep our eye on all the time because you've got the Pacific Plate over here, you've got the North American Plate here, you've got the Juan de Fuca Plate, and they meet at an area, again, 3 large plates meeting at a triple junction fault right off the coast here. So that comes into class or into play a lot this year. Today and this week we're studying, again, we're getting into cells. Remember, this Friday's quiz is all about the cell parts. In other words, we're kind of going through the memorization of the cell parts. This is one time where I am a little bit heavier on the memorization. It's kind of like knowing your multiplication tables. Memorization sometimes gets de-emphasized nowadays, but it does play a critical role in learning. For example, as you go up Bloom's taxonomy, you're laying the groundwork. You're laying the base for remembering, for getting to know the higher level things as we go forward. When you're in math class, you're expected to know, of course, your multiplication tables, at least up through 12 times 12 right away. You say, 12 times 12, 144. Same here. When we're talking about the cell parts this week, it's one of those things that we just need to know going forward because we continually refer to ribosomes and the Golgi apparatus or Golgi bodies and things of that nature. We just have to know what we're talking about. Otherwise, you'd be going back and looking those up every single time. On our Brain Pop today, we talked about proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates, sugars. And when we're looking at proteins, one of the things that we try to give an analogy about one of the students was putting together different things with Legos. And when you have food and you're taking the proteins apart from the food that you eat, our body then reassembles those into the proteins that we need to carry on life processes. You could easily spend 3-4 months in this class talking just about proteins. They do everything in biology. When you're looking at some of the things that are on the board, everything from chemical messengers and hormones, lipids do that too, by the way. Antibodies, muscle movement, expression of DNA. In other words, how do the instructions in DNA get expressed? How are they used to actually do something in your body? When we're looking at body support, again, proteins do act as a fuel source, but they are also supporting our body. When we look at the lipids and fats, they are a fuel source as well. Carbohydrates, also a fuel source. But proteins are fascinating in terms of we get some that are only available from the foods we eat, the essential proteins. We also get some that our bodies can make with the proteins that they take apart from the food that we eat. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about proteins in this class. But for now, just a high-level view, the 30,000-foot view, as they say sometimes. We're checking out good old CHON, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, the 4 most important atoms that get together to make proteins, fats, and sugars. And this week, as we move into week 11 next week, we'll be talking specifically about proteins and why they're so important. On Friday's quiz, to get to the nitty-gritty about quizzes and what's going to be showing up on Friday's closed note test, closed note quiz. First of the closed notes ones we had, by the way. We have yet one more analogy to carry us through. We had cells as factories earlier. This analogy is meant to show cells as a city. And you've seen this before. I'll just put this picture online without reading through the whole thing. But I do want to point out 1 or 2 little things. The city limits of a cell, or the city limits of a city, for example, you think of as just a line on the ground. You go from Pacifica, and now I'm in Montera after you cross the line. Well, in this case, when you're looking at the city limits, think of the city limits of a cell as being a walled city, something from Mr. Westbrook's class over there when you're starting to talk about fortress-type cities that they had built in the Middle Ages. That is regulated by these little doors that look kind of like rotating doors. And guess what? Those rotating doors where things are let in or taken out of a cell, one of the things that regulates them is proteins. So proteins come up again and again in class, which is why we're going through the cell parts. The cell parts are the entire focus of this Friday's quiz, 10-question multiple choice quiz on the cell parts and what is their function. So you might be asked about Golgi apparatus or Golgi bodies. They'll be given 4 choices. Hey, what do they do? If you're looking at, for example, ribosomes, what is their function? On this picture right here, they're the protein factory, the places where the proteins are put together. And most famously, I think probably mitochondria. I tried to draw a little nuclear power plant, a little wind power area, and a tiny coal-burning plant. Mitochondria, often called the batteries of the cell, or the powerhouse or the power plant of the cell. So we're looking through our cell parts. We want to use either the flip card technique that I showed in class, where you make little tiny flip cards within your notebook, or make your own flashcards if you want, or if you like studying with pictures instead, that's okay too. But our goal is to remember the cell parts that we had given out on Monday as our key terms and their function within the cell. Want to keep it brief today, but have yourself a wonderful Wednesday, and I'll see you here online and in class. Bye-bye.